Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES for 10% off any purchase over $10. If you use that promo code between now and January 28th, you will automatically be entered in a drawing to win a Ravnica Allegiance booster box. Check out the description below for details. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to another edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch. Well, Ravnica Allegiance previews are finally over, and this week on the Market Watch you will see some big impacts from the cards that have been revealed, but there's also a lot of other stuff going on as always. Quickly before we get started, just a fast reminder though, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to support the channel. Our Patreon page is down there. You'll also find product links for things on Amazon, and if you make any purchases on Amazon, once you use our initial link, we'll get a small percentage no matter what it is. Finally, Flipside Gaming still offering a promo code for our viewers. Hopefully you can save a little cash while you support us. And as always, thank you not only to the folks that look at those links, but to each and every one of you. Y'all make the channel what it is. So thank you, and let's get into it. We'll begin as we always do with the top 5 cards from standard sets that have lost value this week. So you're going to see a lot of the big cards from the previous standard season here. Right now, people don't want to buy expensive cards until they know exactly what's going to happen with the new meta. So some of these cards got soft, and people aren't selling them. There's still a lot of hope for these cards still being good. Many of them will, of course, still be good, I have no doubt. But right now, there's not a lot of people buying them. Number 5 is Doom Whisper, down 62 cents to $12.34. Very solid card in the previous meta. This really looked good even towards the end of the meta in Golgari midrange decks. Now, with that being said, what's going to happen to it in the next season, time will tell, but there are some new cards that might complement it. Font of Agonies is one, perhaps, although I'm not completely sold that that's going to see standard play. But this is one to keep an eye on in the coming weeks. This is also a very good commander card generally, too. Number 4, the Immortal Sun, goes down 65 cents to $18.30. Another strong commander card here. It's commander that really has propped up the price of this card. It has seen some standard play, but not necessarily huge amounts. Most recently, we saw some copies occasionally in the Selesnya tokens builds. Now, in the next meta, I do think that could continue to some degree. Maybe the card gets a little better, too, with the Afterlife mechanic being introduced. Number 3 is Arclight Phoenix, down $1.43 to $25.08. This card was spiking pretty aggressively during the second half or so of the previous meta, so I'm not surprised to see some snapback at this point, especially in between standard metas. Now, towards the end of the last standard meta, percentage of play was down a little bit on this card, but I still think it's going to be strong going into the next standard. And the big story here over the last couple months really has been Modern anyway. It turned out to be a strong Modern card in a number of builds, and it's still doing well. Even last weekend at the GP, it put up a nice result. Number 2, Nexus of Fate, goes down $2.43 to $26.07. This is a snapback reaction to some aggressive spiking over the last couple weeks. This card was spiking for 2 reasons. The first one being it actually performed relatively well towards the end of the previous meta. We saw Jeskai and then a Bant Nexus deck do pretty well in those last few weeks. Since then, though, it got even hotter because we saw a lot of Ravnica Allegiance cards that feel like it could play really well with that deck. Especially the Bant variety feels like it's getting some good control pieces that could add to it. I mentioned this card last week, but Wilderness Reclamation feels like it could maybe play a role in that deck, perhaps pushing it, making it even better. So right now, a lot of people are interested in this card, but that price jump from the last few weeks really couldn't maintain, so you're seeing a little bit of normalization now. Number 1 is another card in a similar situation, Angrith the Flame Chain, down $3.12 to $14.97. This card has been jumping pretty aggressively over the last few weeks, ever since we found out about the Spectacle mechanic and we started seeing some of these Rakdos cards. I do think this card definitely gets better in the next standard meta, but it just grew too quickly. You're seeing stabilization now. Basically what happens with these cards, if they grow too fast, you know there's going to be people that have them in their collections that never bothered to trade them or sell them. And they see this growth spurt and then they realize, wait a minute, this is a good time to sell. More copies end up going into the marketplace. Even stores will do that online. They might have inventory in their store, but they never bothered to put it online because it wasn't worth all that much and maybe they never got around to it. They'll see the card spike, realize, oh, we better sell that card now. They'll make sure it's online for sale. And again, more inventory will lead to normalization. That's what you're seeing with the previous 2 cards. All right, let's move on to the top 5 cards from standard sets that have gained value this week. And you're going to see a number of cards here that people are speculating on based on some of the previews they saw over the previous weeks. Number 5 is Treasure Map, up 34 cents to $9.50. Not a huge increase here, and this card was very good in the last meta and could just be good in control decks going forward. I don't know if that's going to change all that much, but a lot of people are wondering if treasure tokens could become better. We saw the card Smothering Tithe, and it got people thinking about Revel and Rich's builds again, so this takes a small bump. Number 4 is Grasping Scoundrel. Now this is the Magic 2019 variant of the card at 42 cents to 250. You can only find a copy of this particular variation of the card in the Black Welcome deck. The Welcome decks are products that stores will give out free to new players to get them interested in Magic and help teach them the game. You don't see a lot of people breaking up Welcome decks typically to sell them for parts online. So because of that, this card jumps just due to the fact that there's not a lot of inventory, and somebody decided to price these at a higher price. Don't pay this for the card. Another reason this particular one is moving as opposed to some of the others from Welcome decks just might simply be because a lot of people are speculating that Rakdos Aggro could be good in the next season, and someone is betting on the fact that people might want a more tricked out version of the card, one that you don't see all the time, kind of a conversation piece for their deck, but don't spend $250 for this. This will come down in time if you really want this version of it, or just buy the cheaper copy. Number 3, Arcades the Strategist goes up 48 cents to $4.49. This has been a good commander card ever since it came out, and it now might just become a good standard card. A lot of speculation around this card currently. We saw some things recently coming from the new set that could make this better. High Alert is the main card, but there's some other ones too. Even Resolute Watchdog makes this a little more interesting perhaps. But there have been a lot of big names in the community looking at this particular card in that style of deck for standard. One of which was Saffron Olive on MTG Goldfish. He did a video about this type of build this week. Also, Mike Sigrist did an article for Channel Fireball, and this is one of the deck builds that he mentioned in that article. So with all the eyes on this card, not surprising that it jumped this week. We'll have to see if this card gets there in standard, but even if it doesn't, there's more interest from commander players as well due to the additions coming from Ravnica Allegiance. Number 2, it's on here again, Hadana's Climb. Up 75 cents now to $6. So this has been on our list for a few weeks, and every week I've said the same thing. Simic colors are coming with a new set. This card stands to get a little bit better. This works pretty well with Adapt. It also works with some of the cards we've been seeing. Incubation and Incongruities, Agana Utopian Speaker, Simic Ascendancy. However, this week we got another card that this would play extremely well with, and that's Incubation Druid. So with all of these tools and pieces coming from Ravnica Allegiance, no surprise that this card continues to be hot. I do think it's going to perform well in the next standard meta, and this has potential for some serious growth in the coming weeks, I think. Number 1, Nullhide Ferox, up $1.36 to $5.61. So this is a card that has actually performed relatively well in standard. Why is this going up so much right now? The green Stompy deck might become the Gruul Stompy deck, and one card especially that's got people thinking about this is Rhythm of the Wild. I do think Rhythm of the Wild is going to push Gruul colors quite a bit in standard going forward, and this is another card that could grow more in the coming weeks. Mike Sigrist in that same article also showed a deck build running this card and Rhythm of the Wild. Alright, let's move on to the top 5 modern legal cards that have lost value this week, and you're still going to see a lot of impacts from Ultimate Masters on this list. Number 5, Celestial Colonnade from Ultimate Masters, down $1.92 to $20.89. I do think this comes down a little bit more. Of course, this will continue to see modern play in those control builds going forward, I have no doubt. But with all the extra copies at Rare coming from Ultimate Masters, I do think they have more than quelled the demand for this card. The demand came from the fact that it was never reprinted until now, and it's been a while since Worldweight came out. So if you want to buy this card, wait a few more weeks, keep a close eye on the market. I do think it comes down a little more. Number 4, Noble Hierarch from Conflux, down $2.06 to $62.98. This was also reprinted in Ultimate Masters as a rare, and that's what's brought this price down a little bit. And even though it's come down, it's still pretty expensive. The other copies of this card have stabilized this week for the most part. This one's still losing a little more value, but I think it's going to stabilize pretty soon too. It's just in too many important decks, in Modern Humans, Bound Spirits, for example. So many other Modern and Legacy builds too. Number 3 is Gaddock Teeg, down $2.13 to $27.63. This is the Lorewing copy, and much like the other cards on the list, it was reprinted in Ultimate Masters as a rare, so it's still going down pretty aggressively. And again, I do think it goes down more. The reason it got as high as it did get is because it was a rare from Lorwyn. It never got reprinted. Say it with me now. Lorwyn was another one of those sets that had a lower print run compared to other Modern Era Magic sets. This card was just getting too hard to find, and it is in some really good decks. In Modern, it's a big sideboard card for Humans or Hexproof. Other Modern decks too. Legacy, you'll find this card sometimes even in main decks. Number 2, Surgical Extraction. This is the Modern Masters 2015 copy, going down 296 to 4167. The only card on our list today that was not reprinted in Ultimate Masters, but this card was growing very aggressively over the last month or so now, a little over a month. And it's just due to the fact that Dredge was doing well in the format, so a lot of folks were picking this up for their sideboards, just generally in Modern. And it's a solid card that I think was overlooked for a while, as a matter of fact. And the clincher here for a lot of people was when it did not get reprinted in Ultimate Masters, we saw some pretty aggressive spikes. Finally, you see a little normalization here. Number 1, Liliana of the Veil from Ultimate Masters goes down 235 to 76.95. This was reprinted, of course, as a mythic and not a rare, like some of the other cards we were talking about today. So there's less copies just generally floating around in the marketplace compared to the rares. With that being said, though, this card is dipping a little bit this week. I do expect it to stabilize relatively quickly, though. Again, it's just too popular of a card. It's in some great decks like Jund, Golgari Midrange, so many other Modern and Legacy builds, too. And the other copies have been relatively stable recently, so I assume this one will follow. Okay, let's move on to the top 5 Modern legal cards that have gained value this week. You're going to see some interesting things here. Some of these cards are maybe a little more Commander-centric, but many of them are being pushed due to Ravnica Allegiance previews. Now, before we get to our top 5, I do have one honorable mention. It's Restore Balance, up $1.55 to $6.28. So a couple things about this card. First off, Saffron Olive from MTG Goldfish made a Modern budget deck based around this card, so that got some attention on it. That's part of the reason it's probably going up. Now, the other reason this is going up is because there's a card from Ravnica Allegiance coming called Electro Dominance, which will let you basically cheat these suspend cards into play at instant speed. A lot of people are paying attention to suspend cards right now because of that. Not only has this one gone up, but Living End went up a little bit this week, Wheel of Fate went up a little bit this week. So keep a close eye on suspend cards. If you've been holding off picking them up for a while, you might want to think about grabbing them before this gets out of control. Now, will this be a Modern deck? Will it be a Commander deck? There's a possibility for Modern. Of course, Modern is a very competitive format. We'll have to see if a deck like that can break in. Time will tell, but you never know, obviously. Or, if it doesn't, Commander players will be interested in these type of combos too. Number 5 is Thrumming Stone, going up 222 to 27.54. So, we're used to seeing this show up on lists due to Commander, mostly because of Shadowborn Apostle decks. However, there's a new creature in Ravnica Allegiance that does allow any number of copies to go into a deck, and it's part of a mill strategy. It's called Persistent Petitioners. So that's got some Commander players thinking, maybe trying to brew a little bit with that one. There might even be some Modern players brewing this too, so that could be part of the reason there might be a little crossover appeal going on right now with this card. We'll have to watch it closely. Now, when you think about Commander, a mill strategy for 100 card decks feels a little awkward, but there's another card on our list which will help it along too. Number 4 is Send Triplets, up 229 to 28.15. Another really strong Commander card. It's never seen a reprint. At some point, I would imagine it will. But over the years, this has kind of creeped up slowly over time. Has a pretty nice jump this week. One of the reasons for that is, again, a Ravnica Allegiance card, Tome of the Guild Pact. I don't know if it's necessarily amazing in this kind of deck, but it feels like it would slide right into it. And that combo did get a mention on the Command Zone podcast this week, so I'm sure that's why this card is getting extra attention. Number 3, Rings of Bright Hearth, up $2.33 to $38. Yes, this is another Lorwyn rare. I'll spare you the whole spiel again, but that's part of the reason it's going up. This is an incredible Commander card, though. Commander has really pushed the price of this card over the last few years. Why is it going up this week in particular? Again, it has to do with Ravnica Allegiance previews. A lot of people are seeing these new cards, thinking about interactions with this particular card in Commander. And this is the card I was referring to that will combo with Persistent Petitioners. Again, there might be some Modern brewers out there thinking about this as a possibility too. Combine that with Commander players, I think you're getting some crossover here. Number 2, Sword of Feast and Famine. This is the Modern event deck version, up $2.34 to $37.20. So part of the reason this is moving so aggressively is because it is the Modern event deck copy. And at any given time, there's not too many copies of those on the online marketplace compared to like a normal standard set. So if somebody lists a few a little bit higher or a little bit lower, this card does tend to jump back and forth. So don't read too much into this spike. However, this is an awesome Commander card. It's really been hot since Najeela came out anyway. And now that we're getting more cards from Ravnica Allegiance, cards like Wilderness Reclamation, for example, will just play really well in some of the decks that this card is in already. Number 1, Scrib Ranger goes up $3.83 this week to $4.79. This is an uncommon from Time Spiral. What is the deal with this card? Well, you might have guessed, it's because of another Ravnica Allegiance card. This time it's Prime Speaker Vannifar, which is basically a birthing pod on a creature. So many players are thinking about brewing around this new version of Birthing Pod in Modern, since of course the original Birthing Pod is banned, and others are thinking about combos for Commander. This card got especially hot this week though because Saffron Olive brewed a Prime Speaker Vannifar deck with this in it, so a lot of people maybe have never heard of this card. All of a sudden it grabbed a lot of attention out of nowhere. There just wasn't enough copies on the marketplace to satisfy the spike in demand, and you're seeing a spike. I will say this though, there's a lot of copies of this card out there. People have them in binders, they have them in boxes, stores have them in inventory. As soon as the spike occurred, they started showing up on the marketplace. As a matter of fact, this card has come down a lot in the last about 12 hours or so. I would expect it to quickly stabilize. Okay, let's move on to our Vintage Spotlight. Now the cards today are going to be moving somewhat because many of them are played in formats like Legacy or Vintage or even 93-94. But many of them are also moving just because of the collector's market, so let's see what's happening. Crocus from Eternal Masters goes down 284 to 3801 this week. This card was reprinted in Ultimate Masters as a Mythic Rare, so this one's been cooling off quite a bit, but it does see Legacy and Vintage play. Back to Basics from Urza Saga goes down $5 to $44.99. This got reprinted as a Rare in Ultimate Masters, so that's why it got so soft. Still a great Legacy card, though. You'll see this on a lot of decks like Miracles, not always out of the sideboard either, sometimes in the main deck because of the nature of that format. And again, this one got really high over the last few months because of its play in Legacy. There was also a buyout that drove the price a little bit. But then, of course, when the reprint was announced and we found out it was going to be in Rare, this dipped a lot. This will come down a little more before it stabilizes, too. Gaia's Cradle from Urza Saga. This is on the reserve list up 274 to $349.99 this week. This will see play in some Legacy decks, including Elves. Okay, the rest of the cards in this section are going to be from Unlimited. Unlimited cards continue to be hot. They're still rare enough for collectors to be interested. They are legal in 93-94 format. And many sellers, especially online sellers, they like these better than Alpha and Beta cards because they can move them faster. Bad Moon has a big spike though this week, going up $11 to $48.99. Now this is not on the reserve list. It has been reprinted. Sedge Troll of $15.76 to $130. Now this is on the reserve list, but it did get a reprinting and revised if you're looking for a cheaper copy. Raging River up $16 to $150. This is on the reserve list as well. Did not get reprinted and revised like the previous card though. Same story here, Word of Command. Reserve list not in revised up $27.44 to $152.44. Bayou, now this is on the reserve list but isn't revised, although at some point it feels like it doesn't even matter. This goes up $243.49 this week to $749.99. Now the reason this spiked this week is somebody posted a really high grade copy online, so that's kind of skewing the data a little bit, but they are asking a fair price for it. They're not trying to manipulate the market or anything like that. Next we have Mox Jet, also on the reserve list, and was not in revised of course, up $298.72 to $3,097.72. Now this one is market manipulation. Somebody put a very high listing up for a moderately played copy. I mean, maybe they're just throwing a price up hoping to get an offer, that's possible, or they might be trying to jump the price in the marketplace so that they can sell another copy a little higher than normal. So I would expect this price to stabilize back down as soon as that listing goes away. And lastly in this section, Underground Sea, of course, this is on the reserve list. It did get a reprinting and revised up $604.98 to $1,699.98. And the same thing's going on here as Bayou. There's just a high grade copy listed in the marketplace right now, but they're asking a fair price. They're not trying to manipulate anything. It's just skewing the data a little bit temporarily. All right, time for the Commander Spotlight. A lot of cards on here again, so I'll go kind of quick and just let you know generally why they're going up. Wave of Reckoning from Commander 2016 goes up $1.05 to $4.79. And this is moving because of High Alert. When that card was revealed this week, like I said earlier, got a lot of people thinking about Arcades the Strategist. Now, of course, this won't be going into a standard deck. It's not legal there, but definitely for Commander, a lot of people are trying to grab this. Victimize goes up $1.18 to $3.33. Now, this is the Commander 2015 version, and it just feels like these Commander 2015 cards are especially jumpy. I know the print runs were a little tighter that year. That's probably why. But generally, for the most part, other copies of Victimize are trending up too, just not to this degree. So why would this card be interesting right now? Again, it has to do with cards coming from Ravnica Allegiance, things like Judith the Scourge Diva, for example, as well as just generally the Afterlife mechanic. Felwar Stone from Commander 2015 as well, up $1.20 to $2.99. Generally, Felwar Stones are all going up, kind of like the previous card. However, the Commander 2015 one is moving the most yet again. This is an awesome Commander card, but part of the reason this could be going up is simply because Send Triplets got hot this week, and this plays well in that type of build. So maybe because Tome of the Guild Pact encouraged people to think about Send Triplets, now they're thinking about mana bases, and here you go. This harder to find copy of the card moves up quite a bit. Vedalken Orrery from 5th Dawn. This goes up $1.31 this week to $23.72. This got a mention this week as well on the Command Zone podcast. That's probably why it's moving as much as it is moving. They were talking about relationships with some of the new Ravnica Allegiance cards, and they did mention that this could play well with Mass Manipulation or Wilderness Reclamation, for example. Hazan Tamar is on our list again, this time going up $2.14 to $177.28. This is a Reserve List Legends Gold card. I like to point these out when they're moving up, and this one has been hot recently. Ragnar goes up $2.28 to $39.50 this week, and this is yet another Reserve List Legends Gold card. Kobold Overlord, this is on the reserve list from Legends, although it's monocolored, up $3.98 to $73.98. Ever since Mark Rosewater mentioned the word Kobold a few months back, a lot of people have been trying to pick up anything related to the tribe. Concordant Crossroads from Legends, this card's been hot recently, up $4.50 to $114.62. It's not on the reserve list. It did get a reprinting in Chronicles. If you're looking for a cheaper copy, you can always grab that one to play with, but this one, of course, is the harder to find copy and the more desired one. Now, generally, green commander decks got pushed a little bit with some of the cards from Guilds of Ravnica, including Beast Whisperer, so I think this card's kind of riding that wave a little bit. Mana Severance. This goes up $5.78 to $7.99. Wow. This is from Tempest. It's never been reprinted, but it's not on the reserve list. Now, there's a YouTube channel called The Spike Feeders, and they talk about Commander. They spend a little time on competitive Commander there. And this is a card that was featured in a competitive Commander deck recently, performed pretty well, and because of that, it got some people's attention. Angus Mackenzie's on here again. Another reserve list Gold Legends card. Maybe one of the better ones to actually play Commander with, because it's pretty good in Pillow Fort decks. Maybe one of the better ones to actually play Commander with, because it's good in Pillow Fort. Up $7 to $2.20 this week. One more Gold Legends card, but this one is not on the reserve list. It got a reprinting in Chronicles as well, actually. Solkanar the Swamp King goes up $10.26 to $39.09. Again, if you want the cheaper copy to play with, I would go with the Chronicles one, but this is the more collectible one. Now, this card got a little push recently due to the reprinting of Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth in Ultimate Masters as a rare. I also wouldn't be surprised if some of the Rakdos cards coming from Ravnica Allegiance have got people thinking about different builds with this as well. Alright, with that being said, that's the Market Watch for this week. Tomorrow, we're going to continue our limited set review of Ravnica Allegiance. We'll be looking at the Simic Guild. I think yesterday's video, I accidentally said we're looking at Orzhov on Sunday. It's actually Simic and then Orzhov on Monday. But until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page, as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.